It's the Big Me Kickoff. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. It is Tuesday, March 5th. We're getting to this one a little late, but good reason. Spring practice has started. We had a chance to talk to Ryan Day and Chip Kelly on Tuesday. See about 40 minutes of practice, put up several reels of practice footage. All of that can be seen here at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle and, of course, at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Now, we have already had a couple of shows talking about some of that. So I'm going to try and take this show in a little bit of a different direction because I don't know. I think that if we do 3 or 4 shows on the same topic within 6 hours, you're going to get a little fatigued. You're going to get a little fatigued on it. So a lot of times I try to go and find some different topics out there, whether it be bigger picture or who knows. It just kind of depends on what strikes my fancy. And I found something that I want to talk about, and I hope that y'all want to listen to it. And we'll get to that here in a second, but I want to thank our friends at nonaturals.com who have been a staunch supporter of this show. And because of that, we're going to read a little commercial. And it doesn't hurt that I use the product myself. Don't sleep well. Take these, sleep much better. With this giant, massive melon, I need something to slow the brain down. And these rest gummies are fantastic. But let me read the spot, and then we'll get to everything else. Are you ready for an entirely different edible experience? Welcome to No Naturals, where we're shattering, let's get that right, shattering the stereotype of one-note, slow-acting gummies. Forget waiting over an hour to feel the effects. Our gummies are fast-acting in just 15 to 30 minutes. You're not just choosing a flavor, you're choosing your vibe. With 5 core experiences and 6 custom combos, you're in full control. Whether it's energy and focus without the crash, a peaceful slumber that lasts all night, or a game-changing burst of bliss and euphoria, these edibles are the real deal. And the best part, you don't need a doctor's recommendation. No Natural gummies are dispensary quality and discreetly delivered right to your door. So whether you're craving a productivity boost, a good night's sleep, or some blissful euphoria, who couldn't use that? Say hello to No Naturals. Try them today and use code HUDDLE10 for 10% off your order at shop.nonaturals.com. Know your edibles. Know your experience. No Naturals. So once again, thanks to our friends over there. Want to get that housekeeping out of the way. But yeah, I took a rest gummy last night and slept really well. Went to bed a little early because I had to be up at the crack of dawn to get over to the Woody to cover spring practice. But as I said, we're going to bypass all of that just for the sheer fact that we're going to have other shows on there, and I'm sure I'm going to talk about it. I've got 2 more shows to do this week, so unless you want me to talk about the NFL scouting combine, and based on the numbers, I don't think so. I need to save something for myself. We're going to get a chance to see the team in action again on Thursday before Ohio State spring break. You have a week break from spring practice, and then it fires back up the following week. Andy Staples, who's with On3, and Andy, he's a friend. We don't get to see each other that much, so the word friend gets tossed around a lot. But I consider him a friend. I really like him. National guy, has kind of been a couple other places. He's now at On3. Brought up a proposal of what a super league, like a power 2 conferences would look like. And I think that this is the direction we're going. Do I think we're days or weeks or months away from it? Probably not. I think it's still years, but things could speed up. Florida State could sue its way out of the ACC, and that league could fall apart because if FSU finds a door, other teams may choose to bolt. And I think that is the presumption when you look here, because there are teams from the Big 12, teams that were formerly in the Pac-12 who've moved to the Big 12, the ACC. All of these teams are in here. And of course, you then get the question of, well, once you have these super leagues, who is it that you're going to play? because once you get past, you only have 12 regular season games under the current format. And as they look to expand playoffs, I don't see the regular season getting longer. And you're never going to have a true season long enough to play everybody and then have a postseason. So you need to have pods, divisions, what have you. I know the Big Ten has just gotten away from divisions. The Big Ten East and the Big Ten junk drawer. The East wins all the championships. The junk drawer keeps an East team out of the championship game, shows up, lays down, the end. So you have to create pods. And I'm going to bring up the graphic. I mean, I'm not going to just talk about this in generalities. We're going to get to it. But I want to set the scene a little bit. Now, of course, the question then becomes, do you just go to playing conference opponents? Do you play 12 games against your conference? Sorry, in-state group of 5 schools. Sorry, rivals who are not part of this deal, but I don't think there are going to be a lot of people that are left away. And if they are, well, let me just tell you that it's not necessarily going to be a big deal, because if you're not accepted into this club, you probably weren't going to win much anyway. Do you play 12 games there? And that's what you have: 6 home, 6 up, 6 down, 6 home, 6 away. Do you play 10 games and then you get 2 freebies? Do you play 10 or 9 and you have a situation of where you get one crossover game where the Big Ten and the SEC, let's just call them the NFC and the AFC in this scenario, do you get to cross over and play one there? Or, I mean, is this like old baseball and the NL and the AL do not see each other until the World Series? Or is this like new baseball or the NFL, where you are going to play AFC teams if you're an NFC team and vice versa? There's no real division. None of those things have necessarily been really talked out, because we're still very much in a hypothetical situation here. I'm going to drop the scroll here in a second, and I'll bring it back up when I come back on camera. Again, this is where you can learn more about No Naturals, or you can get it down in the show notes as well with a link to shop.nonaturals.com. Be sure to use code HUDDLE10 for 10% off your order from nonaturals.com. Let's drop this. Let me go over here and go to the Super League. So again, this is part of Andy Staples, part of On3 and his leagues. And as you can see here, 6, 12, 18, 24 across. 24 times 2, 48 teams make the cut to be in this Super League. And we'll start with the Big Ten, because if you're watching my show, you're probably much more familiar with the Big Ten than anything as an Ohio State fan, or in certain cases as an Ohio State hater, because we certainly do have some people from the school up north who do watch the show, and we do appreciate you, except for when you're naughty, and then we just give you a timeout, and then you come back and hopefully aren't naughty again. But you can sit there and see like additions of teams that are not currently in the Big Ten: Florida State, North Carolina, UVA, Pitt, Notre Dame, Utah. Those are your additions right there. And then when you go over and you look at the SEC, you have additions of Clemson, NC State, Miami, WVU, Virginia Tech. I'm just still keep going through all of this. Oak State, K-State, and Texas Tech. So you do have some additions there. Now, noticeably absent schools like Cal and Stanford that nobody necessarily wanted from an athletic standpoint. That doesn't say that neither of these schools aren't worthy of a lot of things. Stanford wins like every national championship for Olympic sports, it seems like, largely. They have huge academic endowments, but when it's all said and done, they don't add anything to the bottom line of what what you're hoping for. Now, I'm going to come right out and say it that with these situations, with these teams, you're not in a case of where it's like, well, we're trying to find a team that carries its own weight financially, so we're not diluting shares. But I think the hope would be if you capture these 48 teams and split them off, that with new deals and things of that nature, not only are you not losing money, but you're going to be making more money because of addition by subtraction, and you're subtracting yourself out of the old format and putting yourself in a new one, and most likely being able to ask for much higher dollar figures. Now I'm going to come back on camera for a couple minutes, and there's more that I want to talk about here. I really want to complain about how some of these divisions are set up, and we'll get to that here. Again, I'm not looking to do a long show. It's already after dinner time as I'm recording this. Again, this is a case of me wanting to get on a topic before it's too far removed. Andy released this a couple of days ago. It's kind of a now or never situation that if I was going to do this show, I needed to do it. And I think tomorrow I'm going to want to get around to finally talking about spring practice. And then by the end of the week, I'm going to want to do a live show. And we may talk about that there too. So if you're watching this and you think that I'm not necessarily addressing an issue that you want me to address, save it for probably Friday. Probably Friday is when we'll do the show. And we'll talk about it because you are the program director for my live shows. You pick most of the topics. I may have something I want to talk about, and I may talk about it for the first 3 or 4 minutes. But you guys wrestle the control of that show away from me quickly. So that's where we go. So let's jump back on camera here. We've talked in past shows about this is the direction that it's going. There's no college in my college football anymore. Well, it sure as hell beats the alternative of NFL Junior. I love the NFL. I'm not going to say anything ill about the NFL. I like being credentialed to the events I'm credentialed to, so I'm going to be very careful. But we do not need a developmental league parallel to college football run by another entity that is not tied to colleges. Now, you can't just sit there and say, well, you could just say that there's no, you do it like basketball. You can go in at 18. 18-year-old kid, 17-year-old kid. I started high school as a 17-year-old. I didn't turn 18 until November of my freshman year. 17, 18-year-old kid's going to get murdered out there. Murdered. Can you imagine a lineman, like a 17-year-old, 18-year-old lineman? I mean, of course, the argument is, well, you're not much of an NFL team if you're having to start an 18-year-old right tackle. But could you imagine an 18-year-old right tackle trying to stop Lawrence Taylor in the heyday? That's not going to be good. You can't have that type of situation. I think that you just have to realize the bell has been rung. You're not going to unring the bell. I know a lot of people I respect just hate NIL, hate all of this. And I try to explain to them that it doesn't matter if you hate it or not. Here's your choice. Watch football or don't watch football. There's not a third option of where watch this football where this doesn't exist. I mean, I guess you could watch NAIA. I don't know. But stuff is going to trickle down in the NC2As as it is. So don't think that you're going to be able to suddenly say, well, a Division I FCS is so much more pure, or D2, D3. Well, good luck finding some of those games in the first place. And then on top of it, things are going to roll downhill. And you're still going to deal with the portal, especially from FCS, as kids emerge into the FBS ranks. So we don't want a situation of where a competitor is able to move into the marketplace and grow roots. It's just not good for anybody who likes college football. I mean, no duh. I mean, that's not really going out on a giant limb there, but that's the reason I think that you have to be nimble, be able to adjust on the fly. And I kind of remembered something else I wanted to talk about. I'm going to save it for another show. So remind me on the live show. I want to talk about Arch Manning not opting into the NC2A game, talking about NIL. That was a thing. I had lunch with Tom, Tony, and Mark. And I'm like, oh, I know what I want to podcast about. And really what I mentioned at lunch was that. But to get back on point, so you have this Super League. You don't necessarily know how it's going to work out, but it works very well in terms of how you construct your playoffs, because you have these pods and you can have champions of the pods. All right, you win pod C and you win pod A and you cross over and everything else. The structure fits a little bit better than conferences that still, as of today, things are changing, but as of today, are not equal in terms of how many league games you play, what is the view on FCS opponents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you would equal things out a little bit, equalize, I guess is the word I should be using. You equalize things a little bit better. Now, this is where I think that the challenge is if you do this, well, first of all, before I get back into the way that Andy laid this out, is everybody who would be part of this Super League has to be on board with spending the necessary resources to be competitive. You know, I like NASCAR. Well, some of you do. I don't know. I like NASCAR. And for a long time, there were start and park cars. You make money by getting in the field. You don't have the money to have a second chassis. You don't have the money to have a second engine. You have duct tape and prayers. So you qualify for the field. You start the race. You run a couple of laps. Oh, we're going to have to park the car. You take a spot away from somebody who potentially would be competing for a money grab. Now, and this isn't me saying that these drivers or these teams, and I know I'm really getting off on a tangent, but I'm going somewhere with this. And these drivers and these teams, you're not Hendrick, you're not Roush, you're not you're not Penske. You don't have the type of money, and you're not going to win the races if you don't have money, and if you don't have money, you're not going to win the races. Well, they did away with start and park. That's not a thing anymore. But I certainly could see teams being start and park teams in terms of this. I'm not going to pick on a school individually because that's not fair. This isn't a thing yet. Nobody's made their declaration that they're going to ham and egg it. But we'll just say School X. That's not Xavier. School X. We're never going to win a national championship under this model. We are a top 48 national type of team. We have some pride. We want to be part of this club. We were going to be in it. But if this club says, oh, you can go up to 100 scholarships and you can do this and you can pay players under, and your NIL is brought in-house and everything else. No, we're fine competing with 80. We're going to not necessarily do these things. And we're going to sit here and get it's a hypothetical number. It's a hypothetical number. So don't quote me on it and say, oh, Noon is saying that teams in this Super League is going to get $120 million a year. But just for argument's sake, $120 million a year. If you're somebody certainly outside of the Big Ten and the SEC proper, and you're in a league that's making $35 million a year as your media rights payout, and you can make $120 million in this hypothetical situation, and maybe not really spend even that much more, that's a problem. So you need to figure out how to make these divisions somewhat equal. And there are going to be people who are going to say, and especially with my argument here, because I hate the division he put together for Ohio State. You draw an easy division, what looks like an easy division. We know things change over time, but I think that teams coming up from the middle up to the top, I don't think we're going to see a ton of that. Everyone's like, well, NIL is the great equalizer. In the middle, it equalizes the middle. I don't necessarily know if Rutgers is going to win NIL and suddenly become a 10-win team in the Big Ten. I think it equalizes, what you can have in the middle, and it's a zero-sum game. Somebody wins a game, somebody loses a game. We don't have ties in college football. So you can better a team in its status in the middle, but if you're a top team, you're still going and you're picking the best out of NIL. Because generally, if you're a top team, your NIL is working. There are some exceptions. And you evolve or die when it comes to that. There are some exceptions. So I don't know necessarily. And then people are going to be like, well, then why go to 48? If you're saying only 7 teams can win a national championship in most years, why go to 48? Money. Think about the money. There's a lot of money there, and there's still a lot of prestige, and you don't know what you don't know until you try it. But to the point is, I wouldn't want to draw an easy division, and here's why. You're not getting challenged to the maximum potential that you could be. And as the year goes on and you get into what is the postseason and you've not been challenged, are you good or are you just farting in the air? I mean, what is it? I mean, we don't know. If you've played against 3 or 4 teams in your round robin in your division that are starting parks, or maybe a step above a starting park, whatever. So I'm bringing back up the graphic again, and here's Ohio State's division: Ohio State, Wisconsin, Northwestern, Illinois, Iowa, and Minnesota. So basically, I look at that as Ohio State and the Big Ten West. And this is not meant as disrespect to any of the other 5 schools, though I'm sure it will be taken as that. This is the internet, and outrage is the new rage and the old rage. So I don't have any ideas or fantasies that people are not going to see that as a slight. I have a couple of podcasting peers that I really like talking to who are Iowa and Illinois guys, and I'm sure if they catch wind of this, I'm going to catch crap from them. But the point being is, you look at the first division in the Big Ten. Penn State and Florida State. Now, Penn State hasn't necessarily been able to get up over the hump as of late. Being in the Big Ten East certainly did not help Penn State. Is James Franklin the guy for them? Is he not? I don't know. I'm not the AD. It's not my job to decide that. And then you have Florida State. And Florida State did go undefeated in the ACC. I mean, maybe that's good. I don't know. I don't think the ACC was all that good last year. They lose the quarterback. Jordan Travis gets hurt, and they get drilled in the postseason. But you've got 2 strong teams there. And then you go to the next division. You got Michigan, Michigan State, and Notre Dame. Michigan could be an up and down team. I think they're going to be down here for the time being. Notre Dame certainly thinks highly of itself. I mean, it's generally year in and year out going to be in the mix. Whether or not that's a case of being overranked in the preseason or not, I don't know. And then we don't know about Sparty. In the third division, you got Ohio State, which is a known quantity. And then you've got 5 teams that very easily could be 9-3 or 3-9. I mean, I just don't know. And that's, all the respect in the world to Luke Fickell, all the respect in the world to David Braun, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But none of those teams have necessarily shown me a level of consistency. None of these teams ran away with the Big Ten West on more than like a year-by-year basis. there was no team out of the West that really made a run like the way that we saw in the East, how the team up north won 3 years. I know nobody wants to hear about that. Ohio State went to the Big Ten championship game for multiple years prior to that. So I just don't know. And then you look at the fourth league. You've got UCLA, who's probably a little down, but Southern Cal, Oregon, and Washington. And we'll even throw Utah in there because Utah's been a bit of USC's kryptonite. All three of the non-Ohio State divisions really seem to have more depth to them than Ohio State's division. Add to that the fact that Ohio State would be the only team out of the Eastern time zone there. It just doesn't necessarily make any sense when you look at it. Now, I had somebody bring up to me, well, swap Notre Dame and Ohio State. And I don't disagree with that. I thought that initially too. But then, of course, there are going to be people who are going to be like, okay, so you got Ohio State playing Michigan during the regular season. How many times could they match up? Well, just one if you set it up properly to where you're playing the 5 teams in your division in the round robin. So now you've got 5. Let's just say 12 is the total. And then you're going to play another division, and that's 6 games. So now you're up to 11. And then whatever the last game is, whether it's 11 and a crossover into the SEC, whether or not it's a dealer's choice and you get to schedule somebody, whether it's you play 5 in your own, 6 in another, and then one that the computer spits out from Division 3 or Division 4 of your conference. I don't know on that. And then I'll talk a little bit about the SEC side too. I think there's a lot better of a mixture over there. Georgia, Clemson. We'll just say Georgia and Clemson in that first division. Florida is really on a downward trajectory right now. I don't know what it's going to take. Miami's been broken since Ohio State beat Miami in the Fiesta Bowl, and nothing else is going to change my mind until I see Miami come back, and that just hasn't happened. All right, in the next league, you got Alabama, Auburn, and Tennessee. Now, you could really make an argument that, well, we don't know what Alabama is going to be with Kalen DeBoer. Auburn trends up and then trends down. We just don't know. And then what is Tennessee all about? Tennessee is great when it has a great quarterback. It's not so much when it doesn't. Well, everybody needs a good quarterback these days. You look at the third division, that one is maybe a little on the thin side. I think Ole Miss is a team on the rise, but is Ole Miss going to be able to maintain that when Lane Kiffin undoubtedly gets another job offer at some point and bolts? You got LSU. And then what? I mean, Missouri is a team on the rise right now. Missouri also was a team that kind of had a perfect storm with a lot of elder statesmen on that roster. Let me see Missouri put it together for 2 or 3 years. Once I see that, I will buy. But right now, I'm passing on them. And then obviously in the last division, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and then maybe even to a lesser extent K-State. And I'm not dumping on Tech or Oak State, but something's going to have to give. And the thing is, as I said, it's a zero-sum game. You win, if you win and they lose, or you lose and they win. I mean, we're basing stuff off of what today is, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what the standings are going to look like. So a lot to figure out there. Now, I'll finish up on this because as always, I want to do a 15-minute show, 20 minutes tops. We're here at 30 minutes. So once again, welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. It is Tuesday, March 5th. This will be going up the evening of March 5th. We are brought to you in part by our great friends at No Naturals. Let me put that back up there for you. There we go. But the point being is, I want to know what you think. There are a lot of people, as I said earlier, there's no college left in my college football. Well, there's no football left in football either, in a lot of ways. You're trying to NFLize my my college game. I'm only a college fan. I don't like the NFL. It's not me saying that. I'm just speaking for people. And now you're making it into a product that I don't like. Well, I guarantee you that if you get into a situation where teams are making $120 million, you're having of your 12 game schedule, you're having 10 great games or whatever, as opposed to having a hard time selling your non-conference tickets because you're playing much lesser competition. I think a lot of people will get on board. There are going to be some people who just refuse to get on board. I think this will drive some fans away. Not many. I think it will bring some fans in. Let's not forget an NFL, like a Super Bowl, brings in like 130 million viewers. A national championship football game in college may bring in 40 million. Now, there's still going to be people who are not going to connect to college football, whatever reason that is. Didn't go to college, don't live near a college, went to a college that doesn't have athletics or doesn't have much by the way of athletics. Weird people who just don't like college football for whatever reason. You're not going to be able to capture all that. And I don't think this plan is chasing 130 million viewers for your championship game. Well, I mean, that's probably a goal, but not a realistic one. So, I don't know. I think Andy Staples, again, of On 3, I want to give credit. I did not do the legwork to make the list. I'm just talking about something that drives me crazy at times, getting on to do a show about somebody else's show. But I felt this is something that is so hot button with so many people, and is something that people need to sit up and take notice of, that I'm breaking kind of my own rule in doing it. Of course, somebody will be like, well, why didn't you get Andy on the show? Because I didn't think about it. And I don't know if he's doing shows not in his own network. But, again, I really didn't think about it. But, I think this is still where we are going. And I'm not convinced that just because you are a legacy member of the Big Ten or the SEC that you necessarily should be in. But again, that gets back into my whole start and park situation. So I don't know. So think on this a little bit as I wrap up here on the show. It's the direction we're going. I don't know if this is the actual course. I can say, though, that if this is pointed east, the general direction that this sport is going is east. I don't know if it's due east or northeast or or east northeast or whatever. I can't tell you on a compass exactly where it's going, but this is the direction that things are going. We are not going back to a situation of where we were with split national champions and you won this bowl game and they won that bowl game and the coaches are going to vote this team and the writers are going to vote that team. That's not where we're going to be. There are too many dollars in play here. Players are getting compensated. There has to be even more dollars involved. And I think all of that is going to be there. And I can predict a lot of the comments. I hate that money has ruined the game. Well, money ruins a lot of things. I'd like money to ruin my life in a good way of like, I have so much money, I don't know what to do with it, as opposed to the current way of I have no money, I don't know what to do. So I don't know. Enough about my problems. We're going to call this a show here on the Big Me Kickoff. I want to thank everybody for sticking with us, either watching us on Tuesday evening, catching us on Wednesday, or whenever. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit a bell so you don't miss a single episode, not the bell of my email ringing. I have not gotten around to closing it. Leave us a comment. Let us know you're watching. Let me know your thoughts. If you're listening to us on one of your favorite podcasting channels, leave us a 5-star review. It helps us with our distribution. All of that matters. Check out all the great programming here at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Sign up for BuckeyeHuddle.com. I'll tell you more about that great site on the next show because it's dinner time and I want to eat and I need to get this show posted. So until next time, thanks for watching. Talk to you very soon.